everyone, my name is Jessa Friedrich and I'm the Digital Marketing Manager here at Edlong, and we are so excited. Today we're going to be talking about answering your most burning plant-based questions. And with me to help do that, I have Emily Sheehan. She is an application scientist out of our Ireland office. Emily, how are you today?
I'm good, Jessa. It's really nice to talk to you today.
So Emily, before we get started, could you tell us just a little bit about, what you do in your role as an application scientist for Edlong?
Yeah, Jessa, I'm based here in Ireland in the lab and the office, and we work on a range of different applications. A lot of our projects recently have been plant-based, so I'm really excited to answer some of your questions about that today.
Awesome. Yeah, plant-based is definitely a hot spot right now, so I think this is a very timely video for us to be doing. So one of the first questions that we have on our list, and we've gotten these from our sales team, from some of you guys who have heard these internally from customers, but one of the first questions we have on the list today that I'm hoping you can kind of shed some light on is, can I use plant-based cultures and flavors together?
Yes, of course you can use plant-based cultures and flavors together. So what we tend to do, and we see in some plant-based products that would be cultured, they might be lacking some of the notes. So we will add back in some of those notes with our cultured flavors. So we have flavors such as yogurt, sour creams, and we add some creaminess in, but you can use cultured flavors along with the culturing process to either enhance the notes or to add back in anything that's missing.
Okay, so really, it's about creating that authentic taste of dairy using some of our flavors, which leads perfectly into the next question, which is, can you help me recreate authentic taste or match brand leaders?
Yes, so that's something that we do regularly, actually. A lot of our customers will send us maybe a target brand product that they're interested in. That could be a dairy. We will taste that. We're quite familiar with dairy and non-dairy products in different brands, and that's how we'd work our way back to build those notes back in with our flavors. So that's something that we do look at regularly, yeah.
Okay, and so when you're adding those flavors, do you typically add them at the start or the end of the process? I know we typically like to start working with a customer towards the beginning of the project, just so we can provide insights along the way using our experience and things that we've learned. So, but when you're actually adding the flavor, do you typically add it at the start or the end of the process, or is there a right answer?
Yeah, so when we're in the lab here, when we get maybe a base from a customer, and we will add the flavors in just into the product, stir it in, taste it, just as a basic step. When we're talking to our customers, we like to know what their process is about, and maybe different steps that they could add it. So a lot of customers will want to add it at the start, or that will be their only option. We need to take then into consideration their processing, like whether it's going to be heated, so we'd use heat stable flavors, and whether there's oil in the ingredients, so that we could use oil soluble, things like that. So if there's an option for a customer to add a flavor at the end where it's not going to affect the shelf life or the quality of the product, we do suggest to do that as well, because then it can go through less processing. But again, I think it's very much up to the processing and the product itself.
Okay, and so another question that we often get is, will flavors affect the pH of my product? And does that have anything to do with whether you want to add it at the start or the end of the process?
Okay, so that's a question. Some of our flavors wouldn't actually affect the pH at all, but some of our flavors, for instance, the cultured ones I mentioned earlier, those would contain a small amount of acid. So depending on the usage level that you would use in your product, maybe if you're using it in a plant-based sour cream, it would actually reduce the pH of that product slightly. This can be a plus though, because it can actually it can enhance the notes. Like for instance, do you want those kind of lactic or sour notes in a sour cream or a yogurt? And it can help to reduce the pH, which would be for shelf life as well. So it can be a plus, but it's just something to be aware when you're using our culture flavors, that it can affect it. But generally, our other flavors wouldn't affect the pH at all.
Sure. And that's something that along the way, our scientists can advise on, as we're collaborating with the customer, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's it. I think it's the more we know about somebody's base and the restrictions around what they're doing, the more information we have, the better we can help, especially when it comes to things like base notes and knowing which flavors are going to work well in different plant-based products. So that's where we come in.
It makes a lot of sense. So another question that we get very often is, can I use flavor to improve mouthfeel in, say, a fat-free application? And if so, how do flavors help with mouthfeel?
Yeah, so we do see this often in projects that come in. So we worked on different fat-free or low-fat projects such as vegan mayonnaise, things like that. And what we do is we'd add some of our maybe our butter or cream flavors that will add back in that richness or the fatty notes. We also have mouthfeel flavors as well that does a similar that has a similar effect, sorry, on products. So we would use those flavors to add back in those notes. It kind of enhances the perception of fattiness in the product that you'll feel in your mouth when you taste it. So yeah, and as well in things like plant-based cheese, we'd use for masking and mouthfeel, we'd use maybe butters, creams, milks, and they really do give that feeling of that authentic dairy fattiness that you can get a mouthfeel that you would have in those products.
Awesome. So still related to texture, the next one is kind of my product is chalky. Can flavor help improve the texture of that? And if so, how?
Yes, so again, when it comes to chalkiness of products, we would kind of ask the customer, or if we don't, or if we already know or have had the conversation, what ingredients that they would be using in their product, because that can affect the texture. So things like proteins would affect the texture of a plant-based product. We can help by adding flavors in there to help to mask that or to improve the mouthfeel, but also we might look at the processing conditions, see if there's anything else that we could do or suggest maybe an ingredient that might be more functional. If, for instance, it could be that just the product wasn't heated to the right temperature when pasteurizing, or the shear wasn't right, so that the ingredient hasn't become functional. So.
Yeah, again, I'm seeing this theme of kind of collaborating along the way. It really helps us to get our customers to the best answer. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so another one is I want to make my product sugar-free. How can flavor help?
Again here, so we have a couple of answers here. We have a range of flavors called Sweet Spot, and they work in synergy with sugar, but they can also work in synergy with sweeteners. So sometimes when we're reducing, or if we're reducing sugar in a demo or an application or a customer you're going to have to bulk it back up or add some sweetness using the artificial sweetener. And with these, you can get some different off notes, or maybe it's too sweet, so you might want to dial it back down and mask that. Or like, as I mentioned, our Sweet Spot that can kind of work with the sweetness to enhance that again without adding extra sugar or sweetener. We also have a sweet range, so we have things like chocolates and caramels and white chocolate, a whole different range of things. Those can kind of be added in along to a sweet. It wouldn't be necessarily for sugar reduction or increasing the sweetness, but it can help with those kind of products with adding some sweet notes too.
It definitely sounds like a green alternative, because a lot of plant-based products are also, better for you because people consuming them want to have that healthier lifestyle. So it sounds like this can kind of give them that indulgence that they're looking for without having to add sugar in and make the product more unhealthy to get to that flavor.
Exactly, and that's, I think people are sometimes, feeling a bit guilty if they're consuming things like maybe desserts, and just if you have that little bit of anything to kind of bring that back, that's great. So using our flavors to kind of get there is a really good option.
Awesome. So I guess the next question, we're talking a little bit more about some of the better for you plant-based products. Sometimes our customers will come to us and say their product is heavily fortified, or they would like it to be, and they want to talk about masking off notes. How can we help with that?
Okay, so yeah, that's something we come across all the time. I think that's one of our biggest things, really, I think, in whether it is in plant-based or anything else. So like masking of fortified products, whether it's with caffeine, vitamins, plant-based proteins, whatever your ingredient may be, even some fats and oils, even though it wouldn't be fortification, you're going to get some off notes from those types of ingredients. And so that's what we would do, is kind of try to identify the off notes, or whether it's a bitter or sourness or maybe a beaniness coming from like a plant-based. And then we look at our flavors and see which ones target that particular type of off note. So yeah, we've done an awful lot of work in it. It's something I think that we have a lot of work done in, and going to know our flavor combinations that will work for different products. So for instance, we would have a group of flavors that would work for maybe coconut, and different ones that would work for almond. So yeah, that's something we've done a lot of work on, and yeah, I think that's something we can really help our customers with.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of great that we sit on this knowledge base so that we can leverage that research that we've done in the past and the information we already have from either past projects or research that we've done to really help our customers like commercialize and get to market faster with their products too.
Exactly, and that's something I think I always keep note of, even when we're working on a project, even if something isn't necessarily working for that product. Like if you know it's a good profile or something that would fit somewhere else, it's kind of, you can pull it from there and you can add that into your next product. So I think it's all about that and just taking learnings from whatever projects that we're working on, and like that communicating between all of our global sites. So
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. And so on the kind of the flip side of masking off notes, is there anything we do that helps to build base notes? Because sometimes we have customers who are looking to build base notes, and I guess also like what would the benefits of building base notes be for certain products?
yeah, so building base notes is more when you don't have maybe something to mask and it is just that the product is maybe a little bit bland. You want to add in some of that, especially for dairy. You want to add in, as we talked about earlier, maybe some fatty notes, some freshness, some of the just really all-rounded dairy notes that you can then go on and add things like if you wanted it to be a cheddar sauce, you've got your dairy creaminess, fattiness, but you're missing your cheddar cheesy notes. So to build that base note is just giving it a really good backbone, should we say, that you can layer your flavors on top of. So it gives a more complex application rather than just, sometimes one flavor will work for, if it's a more basic application, or maybe it was just something you wanted to use one flavor for, yes, that can work as well. But if you want to get into a more complex and to really, look at something that's authentic, you're going to have to go with something like that, building a base profile and then adding on top.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned flavor layering, and I know that's a huge part of creating authentic taste. Do you have anything you want to elaborate on there? Maybe because I know that's a big thing that you guys work on, is trying to create that authentic taste by layering different flavors together.
Exactly. I suppose for people who don't know as much about flavors, it's something like we look at the different notes that each of our flavors bring. And when you're trying to mimic a dairy product or a target product, you're looking at all the notes that are in that product and trying to bring it all together by using different levels of our flavors in combination. So that's kind of how we work that. And I suppose what we can do as well, sometimes we look at if something works really well, we could make a new flavor. There's lots you can do really. One flavor can bring a lot to something, but I think the combinations and really looking at in detail at the notes that different products are bringing, using a combination works really well for that.
Awesome. Well, the next question is kind of specifically related to yogurts and cream cheeses, but if you can think of another use case, I'm open to that too. But I know we get the question a lot, like, should I add flavors before or after the fermentation cycle in my plant-based yogurt or cream cheese?
So what I've seen in previous projects is that we would add it after the culturing step and just before pasteurization. And it's something that like the flavor is not going to be broken down. You're still going to get all your flavor in there. It's still going to have to go through its heat treatment. But again, I think it's process determined really, and what people want to do. So we recently worked on a project where the plant-based yogurt was cultured in the first stage of the process, and our flavor was added into a fruit preparation that would be stirred into it. So that would have been added of the actual processing cycle. So our flavors were still used. It wasn't used as a cultured product. It was actually a sweet flavor that was being added at the end of the process.
That's really interesting. All right, so Emily, we're going to move on to kind of just our last question. It summarizes a lot of what we've talked about today, but it is something that we get kind of directly asked very frequently when it comes to plant-based, and that is, how can you help me deliver a fresh dairy taste versus a taste that has some of those cardboardy or flat notes in it?
So some of the plant-based products, depending on which ingredients are involved in the production, would give some of that cardboardy note. We talked about masking already previously in the conversation, but yeah, it's just to build back some of the freshness that you would get in a natural dairy product by trying to hit the notes that would be in there. So whether it be fresh or fatty, or maybe a sweet note that you're going to get from a full fat milk or a heavy cream. So what we do is we'd look at the product to try and build those notes back with our flavors. Here in Ireland, so say for instance, we have a more cowy note or a grass-fed note in our milk, and that's something that we look for in our flavors to bring us back to that kind of like fresh dairy. It's just again looking at the product you're trying to target, bring the notes that you need back, and look at our milk flavors that would work for that.
Yeah, and I think that's the great thing about us being an international company, is that we have offices around the world. We work with customers all around the world. And, there are those different taste profiles that you get. And, you would think a cheddar cheese would be the same. When you say cheddar cheese, it's cheddar cheese. But really, like, what I think cheddar cheese is might be different from what you in Ireland think it is, or what someone in Mexico thinks it is. So it's really interesting, to know that those different taste profiles are out there, but also, to be able to leverage the experience on our team, no matter where you are in the world, to have that kind of expertise.
Exactly. And I think it really shows in our range of flavors, and it shows that the diversity that we have and the different notes we can hit for globally, not just Ireland and the US or Mexico. It's great to have the options.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much, Emily. I won't take any more of your time. I know that you are very busy over there. So I want to just thank you again for being on with us today, and hopefully look forward to talking to you again soon on one of these.
Exactly. Thanks very much. And I'll talk to you soon, Jessa.
All right. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye.